Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the TWSN live show. As always, guys, we're here every single Tuesday night on the Right Way Sports Network YouTube channel. And, guys, I'm excited for this one. We got Jake back on the show. Jake, how are you doing, my guy?
Well, other than my hair being complete mess, longest it's ever been. But other than that, happy to be back. Baseball's back. Got a new national champion, and the Lakers still are without their two best players. So,
yeah.
Other than that, doing good.
Tough for you being a LeBron lover. But Will, how are you doing? It's another Tuesday, and what?
Yeah, and as my good friend Daniel Alameda says, another Tuesday, another dollar. So.
Excited to see what you have today. Max, like I said before the show, we were talking. You were saying you're going to bring the heat today. Let's see it. How are you doing?
Good, man. We got Champions League just started today, or picked back up today, so I was excited for those games. And we got a lot of good things to talk about today, so I'm excited for today's show.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And as always, guys, before we get into the actual show, make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel. Right? Subscribe. We have great content coming out every single day. Jake is doing an amazing job with his 32 teams in 32 days series. He's basically covering one NFL team a day, interviewing guys like Benjamin Albright, interviewing all the top guys in the NFL world. Great stuff. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter at TWSN. That's where all the new news is coming from, at TWSN. But guys, let's jump right into this. We're going to start it off with March Madness. March Madness, the tournament has finally concluded. Baylor versus Gonzaga, the hyped-up matchup. It didn't really come to fruition as Baylor completely dominated Gonzaga through the course of the game. But one thing I really want to ask, because I saw this a lot on Twitter yesterday, people were calling Gonzaga overrated, right? Saying they're overrated, they lost one game, they didn't play anybody. Talk to me. How would the game go? What were your thoughts on it? Will, start us off.
Well, I mean, in the sense that if we're trying to call them the greatest college basketball team of all time, by that standard, yeah, they're overrated. But in general, absolutely not. I mean, was the 2015 Kentucky team overrated just because they lost one game, or UNLV in 1990 just because they lost one game? Or heck, even the New England Patriots in 2007, they went 18-0 and then lost to the Giants. Were they overrated just because they lost one game? No, they all simply just got beat because they were off their game, and it just happened to be on the worst day possible for them to be off their game, which is the championship game. Look, Gonzaga was for the literally dominant every single game of the season, except for this game, obviously, where they got smoked. And against UCLA, they narrowly pulled out the victory. But they beat more ranked teams than any other team in the country, despite being in a weak conference besides BYU. They had the highest margin of victory nearly of all time. They had the best offense in the country, one of the best offenses in college basketball history. So no, they were not overrated. This is a championship game was so much more about what Baylor was able to do. The Baylor Bears were absolutely legit. They were just as good. They were both on the same level as teams. Yeah, Baylor had a few slip-ups in the conference tournament and a little bit before that in the regular season, but they were playing their best basketball at the perfect time. Their defense is absolutely incredible. I mean, Davion Mitchell and Jared Butler absolutely have risen up draft boards, especially Davion Mitchell, basically a clone of Donovan Mitchell, and a little bit of Marcus Smart on defense would be my NBA comp for him right now. But look, the bottom line is they were on the same level as teams, and Baylor just got the best of them due to their superior defense. And look, I tweeted it out, but when Baylor is hitting shots, contested shots in your face, you're just not going to be able to go on a 10-0 run to come back against them, because even if Gonzaga creeped back and they had 6-0 runs, 7-0 runs, Baylor would just hit a shot that the hand was in their face, but they still just made the shot anyways. So Baylor just quieted any long run that Gonzaga could have made. And they were dominant, frankly, from start to finish. So credit to Baylor Bears. Scott Drew with one of the all-time great comebacks for a program, really in college or sports history, period. I mean, Baylor has been just – when was the last time they even won the championship? I think the last time they went was like in the 50s or the 40s or something like that. So it's absolutely incredible what he was able to do. But no, Gonzaga is not overrated. I mean, they're a Goliath of the sport. They've been to the champ. I mean, no team in the past 6 years has won as many tournament games as Gonzaga. They've been to 6 straight Sweet 16s. They're not an overrated program or a team this year.
Yeah, and it's weird, right? Because I mean, they started out as the David, and because a small school program, and now they're the Goliath. But Max, was this anything different than what you expected? Did you expect like this turnout of a game?
Well, I think everyone expected Gonzaga to go in and win this game pretty convincingly, and I point to the fact that obviously Jalen Suggs hit that big shot against UCLA a few days before the game before. So you'd figure they had a lot of momentum going into that game, but also just the sheer size of Gonzaga compared to that of Baylor, and that's not to discount their guard play because they have incredibly gifted guards, especially on the offensive side. For speaking of Gonzaga, but I thought when it came to the battle of the boards, rebounding, second chance points, that Gonzaga would have a significant edge on Baylor, and that frankly, even though Baylor's defense is incredible and very respectable, I figured Gonzaga was the hotter defensive team going into that game. So I thought that mixture of size and defense would have paid dividends for Gonzaga against Baylor, but unfortunately that did not happen for them. And even though it was maybe underwhelming to the neutral eye, if you're a fan of college basketball, you love seeing a program like Baylor win a national title in a sport that's been dominated by the likes of Duke, North Carolina, and I guess Virginia as of late, and some other dominant programs as of late. Seeing a program like Baylor win was it their first national championship? If not, that was their first Final Four appearances. Right. That was their first Final Four appearance since like the 50s. Right. So seeing that turnaround for that program is fun to see as a fan. But ultimately, look, you can't call Gonzaga frauds or anything. They, all in this calendar year or within this past season, they beat the likes of Kansas, Auburn, Iowa, West Virginia, Virginia, BYU. Obviously, they're in the same conference. And then in the tournament, obviously, they beat USC with Evan Mobley. They beat, obviously, UCLA, who honestly deserved to be in the Final Four after such a dominant run in the tournament. Off that buzzer beater. They beat Creighton. They beat a ton of really strong ranked teams throughout the year. So you can't call them frauds. You just have to say, unfortunately, they just have a history of not getting it done when it matters most, and that's in the national championship game.
Yeah, and Jake, talk to me.
You can't call them overrated. They're not overrated because, Will, you pointed to it about being compared to the Kentuckys and the UNLVs who, were one game away from, or at least UNLV was and Indiana State was at being one game away from becoming the only undefeated champion. And Gonzaga was one game away from doing that. Gonzaga was one game away from literally being the definition of the greatest college basketball team in the history of the sport. Whether you think they had the most talent, whether you think they were the most coached, whether they went through the biggest gauntlet, they were one game away from doing something that no other champion has ever done. And they fell one game short. So the whole crowd was like, "Oh, Gonzaga is going to win the title." That they didn't play on all year. They're so good. They're going to win 6 games. And they're going to do it. Then they lose by 16 points, and no, they're not that good. No, they're very good. I still think that they had the best starting 5 in all of college basketball. They ran into a team that was playing very well at the right time. Baylor played their 2 best games of the entire tournament on Saturday and last night. Their blowout against Houston, where I think they shot over 55% as a team, unbelievable. They didn't even shoot that well last night as a team. Looking through the box score, Gonzaga outshot them, except for threes. Gonzaga shot 55% from the field. It was just the turnovers and a bunch of missed threes. They shot under 25% from 3 and a bunch of turnovers. Drew Timme looked lost. Baylor played really good defense. A bunch of their bigs got into foul trouble early. It didn't phase them. Chachua, Vital were both in foul trouble, and both of them did a very good job kind of alternating, guarding Drew Timme on the perimeter, and Drew Timme looked lost. Like, he couldn't do anything. And Baylor and Scott Drew had a great game plan, and I think we all were blown away by the outcome. I wasn't entirely surprised Baylor won. Like, I picked them. I picked them over Gonzaga in my only bracket that I did, my one and only bracket. I'm not a bracket diva or a
I picked him in the championship, one of them.
One of the 12. But no, my only bracket, I had Baylor and Gonzaga, and a lot of people had Baylor Gonzaga too. And it was the matchup we all wanted. It was the matchup we got to see, and Baylor was the better team last night. But I will say this, and in watching the game, you've thought, like, watching the game for the last 20 minutes, you were expecting Gonzaga to come back and make a run and make it a 7-6 5-point game. It never happened. They never clicked. They never really went on that run, and part of that was Timme being unable to get going. Kispert was not great. Suggs didn't look great in the first half. He was turning the ball over a lot. Timmy had, I think, 6 turnovers. But, like, they just never went on that run. And credit to Baylor. Baylor and Scott Drew. It was a quiet night for the Scott Drew can't coach crowd. I mean, unbelievable game plan. Great shooting night. Butler, Mitchell, just they blew me away. And I thought they were going to win. They did. But in the method and the way that they did and the way they played, very impressive.
Yeah. I think.
I mean, one last thing I want to add is, Maxine brought up a really good point about how, the blue bloods of the sport have been dominating for so long. And I mean, just to name a few programs, but like Alabama, Gonzaga, Villanova, Michigan, Illinois, Baylor, all these programs have had a lot of success for the past few years, or even if it's just for one season, being great for one season. And I mean, we saw Kansas was not that good this year. Sure, they were a 3 seed, but they got wiped out by USC. Duke and Kentucky didn't make the tournament. North Carolina went out in the first round, and Roy Williams is now retired as well. So I think we're definitely seeing new huge programs emerge in the sport of college basketball, which I think is good for the sport.
Yeah, regardless, like it's amazing for the sport. I mean, because a lot of times it gets repetitive, right? That's one of the biggest issues people have with college football sometimes. It gets repetitive. They don't want to see Alabama. They don't want to see Max's Clemson Tigers. They don't want to see the Notre Dames of the world, Ohio States. So it's good. It's good to see new faces.
They won't be seeing Notre Dame win any big games, so it's not a big deal. Just have to put that.
We can definitely talk about Notre Dame at some point, but talking about new faces, let's switch over to the NFL and talk about Sam Darnold, right? Sam Darnold got traded to the Carolina Panthers, and wow, right? We knew this was coming. This pretty much locks in the New York Jets to take a quarterback, whoever they select at number 2. It could be Zach Wilson, could be Justin Fields, but regardless, a new era in could be Justin Fields. We'll see. We don't know.
It's the wrong pick. It's the wrong pick, but they're going to take Zach Wilson.
Yeah. We'll see. Time will tell, but new face in New York and also new face in Carolina. Could this be because they aren't going to be able to get Deshaun Watson? Could this be because they aren't going to be able to get a quarterback? We'll see. Let's talk about it. Jake, what does this signal for the Carolina Panthers this upcoming season?
Well, it signaled that they wanted a quarterback, right? Like, we all knew that they wanted a quarterback. I believe they were in on Carson Wentz a little bit. Schefter confirmed that they were heavy suitors for Deshaun Watson, like we all expected them to be. Obviously, that is probably not going to happen. And great job by them not overpaying for Sam Darnold when Sam Darnold was their second or third option. He was their second or third go-to move. And credit to them, they didn't overpay even when their first priority or even second, Russell Wilson, isn't working out. He's probably not going to end up getting traded. Most likely, and then Deshaun Watson is just not going to work. These allegations, there's so many of them, and I'm not going to speculate and say that they're true or they're false, but it doesn't look great for either the Houston Texans or Deshaun Watson or anyone who wants to trade for him. So credit to them for getting this done. They didn't overpay. They have extra picks this year and next year too, and they dealt some of it for a starting quarterback. Starting quarterbacks are very valuable, and people think I hate Sam Darnold. I don't. I'm just a believer in, okay, it's been 4 years and you haven't gotten better. And part of that is the roster and the offensive line and Adam Gase. And, he's not going to have that chance to perform in New York without Adam Gase because he left or both of them are now gone. But a 1-year trial run for Sam Darnold in Carolina. Joe Brady will be there 1 more year, and then he's going to be off to wherever he goes to be a head coach. I hope to God at Cincinnati. But anyways, he's gone. Darnold will be there for a year. They did pick up his 5th-year option, so he'll be a free agent after this year and potentially look for a starting job. Do the opposite of what Mitch Trubisky did. Obviously, Trubisky stayed with Chicago. They did not pick up his 5th-year option. So he stayed his 4th year. Lost the starting job, didn't perform great, and then signed as a backup in free agency. Hopefully Darnold now with a fresh scenery, new offensive coordinator, great culture, great weapons, decent O-line, young team can perform well and then cash in with another team. Or maybe they stay. I think Carolina's going to be in the quarterback market next year too. Great quarterback class next year as well. Probably nothing more than a 6-7 win team. The division is not great, but Tampa's still very good. I think Atlanta's going to contend. They had a lot of close games last year. Very good offensive team. they're going to score points. And then there's New Orleans, who's an X factor. We don't know what they're going to look like. I think they're going to win with Jameis. I really think they're going to win with Jameis. And I think they'll be fine. They got out of their salary cap troubles, and their roster's still fine. So good division. Carolina didn't improve that much, but they got their quarterback.
Jake, I think at some point we have to talk about Jameis Winston. I think we got to talk about that next. I love Jameis Winston. I think Jameis Winston is going to be great for the Saints if they give him the starting job, right? I mean, Taysom Hill's there. I don't know. I don't know what Sean Payton's doing. I don't know what he did last year. I don't know why
Sean Payton kind of loves Taysom Hill, so I don't know.
And that's interesting, right? I don't understand why when Jameis Winston's only 27 years old, 27. He still has a chance to be the franchise quarterback, but that's a tangent. So, Max, we talked about the Carolina Panthers. Do you still expect them to go out and try to trade up for a quarterback? Do you expect them to still go for Deshaun Watson? Or do you think Sam Darnold's going to be that Ryan Tannehill type of guy where he completely revitalizes his career?
I think it's too soon to say that he'll be the next Ryan Tannehill, but I do think that he'll certainly improve because you can only go up from there, from where he's at, which is frankly rock bottom. And a lot of it is his situation, right? I mean, the Jets had no weapons on offense, pretty mediocre offensive line, and a terrible head coach. So, obviously that's not a winning situation for whichever quarterback is playing for them. And it happened to be Sam Darnold. So I think for him, it's a new situation, a fresh situation. Unfortunately for him, he does have to play Brady twice a year again. That's the one negative in going to Carolina. But outside of that, I will say that, I do expect improvement because, he will get more weapons. He will have better opportunities to grow and develop. He will have the right coaching staff to help nurture his development, throwing the football, making the right reads, and every facet of being a quarterback. And I'm interested to see what the Teddy Bridgewater situation is because of this trade, because, obviously he's still on the roster. There's rumors that he may get traded. There's rumors that, they're going to let him decide where to go. They may keep him. I think it would be better. I think it would benefit both quarterbacks if they kept them both on the roster and then they did kind of a quarterback battle to see who would be the starter week one. And I think you're going to get more value out of both if you were to do that. And I think you could possibly get higher trade value in Teddy Bridgewater should he play a few games this year before you put in a Darnold. So I think you should keep him for a little bit. Him for a little bit, and then Darnold can be the long-term franchise guy if he hits his potential.
Darnold's the week one starter. Teddy.
You don't think if they keep Bridgewater, they make it like a genuine QB competition to see who's the starter?
No, it might be a competition, but they're bringing him in to be the starter. I
don't disagree with No, I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying I feel like it would benefit both guys if they were to keep them both on the roster to have that competition, so that Darnold doesn't feel like he's just a shoo-in to be the starter. If that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. But teams draft quarterbacks all the time. Some of them might not start, but they draft them to be the week one starter in year one.
Sure.
They made this move to bring in Darnold so that he can start week one and be an upgrade. If he is not an upgrade immediately, then they're disappointed.
Well, I agree with that. And also to answer your question that I forgot to answer, Daniel, I don't see them being necessarily aggressive on Deshaun Watson because, frankly, we don't know what's going on now. It's the number of women that have been accusing him are up to 22. Again, innocent until proven guilty, but it's not a very good sign if you ask me. And I'm just curious to see how the league handles that with regard to his eligibility to play next year. So obviously with everything in question, I don't think anybody's traded for Deshaun Watson. But I think, you bring in a guy like Darnold to be that guy like Jake was mentioning, to be the day one starter, to see if he can show a lot of potential. And then if he disappoints, next year, you have the draft capital, go trade up for a quarterback. I think this year you can see them possibly trading down or going for another position of need. I don't think they're going quarterback this year.
Exactly. And we, real quick, we got a really good question here because Jake talked about the last year or next year's quarterback class. And the point I really want to make is it's far too early to tell, right? If we're looking at let's look at this year's draft class, right? If we look at them, last year, Trey Lance, he's iffy. Justin Fields, without this full season, he's still iffy. I have a lot of concerns about him. And Zach Wilson isn't even in the conversation. So that for me, that's where I think this next year we're going to see guys like Jaden Daniels. We'll see if he's serious. We're going to see if he's a legit quarterback prospect. Guys like Sam Howell, we'll see, okay, does he take that next step without all of these weapons around him? Because Williams is gone. Carter's gone. Brown's gone.
And Slovis out of USC as well. That's another one that's been on a lot of big
Slovis right now
boards.
is QB2. And
I would say I would agree with that. Yeah.
So Daniel Pike in the comments, who's like, how is the quarterback class good next year? This time last year we were questioning. Okay, I'll say this: Fields and for whatever reason, Fields and Lawrence were 1A, 1B. Yeah, that was never the case in my opinion. It's always been Lawrence, and then a couple tiers below. Fields was that second tier. I think he still is. And then it was the outlier. Zach Wilson was not in that conversation. Trey Lance was. Mac Jones was not. It was Jamie Newman, who was a consensus top 5 quarterback. He didn't play, had a horrible Senior Bowl. So the thing with the quarterback classes is that in April, but the year prior, they're all very raw. There's normally one superstar that's going to be Sam Howell. Some people say he's Baker Mayfield. I think he's a more athletic, more accurate, but stronger arm Baker Mayfield. So he's legit. He's going to be legit. We'll see how he does without Brown, without Newsom, without Carter, without Williams. But every single year there are quarterbacks who just they perform well. They raise their draft stock, and then during draft season, after the season, the media hypes up all these quarterbacks. Mac Jones goes from being a borderline first round talent to probably going number 3 overall, strictly because of the media. Maybe teams have always viewed him as a top 10 talent.
What a
we don't
stupid
know.
pick that would be.
But there is so much time between the season ending and the actual draft for these absurd quarterback evals to just come in and all rise. So I guarantee you that yes, players like Spencer Rattler, players like Keaton Slovis, players like the guy from JT Daniels, the quarterback from Cincinnati. I'm forgetting his name.
Riddler, Spencer.
Yes, Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati. There will be players who have Kyle Trask type seasons, who have Mac Jones type seasons, who we're not thinking of right now, who will show off their arm talent, who will improve. And NFL teams love to see improvements from year 2 to year 3, from year 1 to year 2, from year 3 to year 4. So there will be those. This quarterback class right now looks really good, and it's going to get even better.
Yeah, and I want to touch on the 49ers in a bit, how you said Mac Jones, but let's finish off the Sam Darnold topic real quick. Will, I know you wanted to add something.
Yeah, just real quickly, to me, I mean, this is exactly what I think both sides needed, especially for Darnold. I've said it before. I think Darnold can revive his career. I mean, I still believe mainly because I was a believer in Sam Darnold in the pre-draft process, and I'm going to still hold out some hope just because of the terrible situation that he was in. I still think he can make a career comeback. I think it's a little too early to just say that he's washed up and he can't play anymore. But I did think that had to be away from the Jets, and I think the Jets clearly agreed. I think this was necessary for both sides, and it's going to end up pretty well for both sides, especially for Sam Darnold. You're going into a culture and a team that is on the uprise. The Panthers showed a lot of promise last year, despite there being questions when Matt Rule was hired about, how good of a head coach in the NFL can he be? Yeah, I'd say he's a pretty good head coach, and everything that he's done so far has worked. So I think Rule and Brady are easily capable of elevating the play of Sam Darnold. He's going to have the best running back in football, so that helps versus no running game, which he had in New York. He's going to have some competent weapons. I think they still have the 8th overall pick. I expect Kyle Pitts maybe to be available at 8. That's a huge weapon for Sam Darnold. There
you go. Yeah.
Amazing pick. And then for Sam Darnold, for the Jets' perspective, Sam Darnold was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league last year. Statistically. So to get a 2nd, a 4th, and a 6th back is pretty good value. I would say that's good work from the Jets. You're still stockpiling draft picks, is the smart move to do. In their case, there's a little bit of a risk for the Panthers. Maybe if he doesn't, if Sam Darnold just leaves in free agency next year. But with everything Rule has done, I expect Darnold to improve. And honestly, I think the most likely option for the Panthers is that he will be there. I think he'll agree to a contract, assuming we see a good deal of improvement from him next year.
Yeah, and I think I saw this on Twitter. I was reading. I was like, it's such a good comparison. People were comparing the New York Jets to the Miami Dolphins, right? I mean, because the Jets have just stockpiled picks. They have 2 first rounds next year. They have a lot of picks, and also everything's new, right? New GM, new head coach. You're revamping everything. You get rid of your old quarterback. You bring in a new quarterback. You still have last year's draft class, which I think was at least a B+ draft class. I really, really, really like the draft class. So they're doing everything right. So now it's, hey,
you better improve on the field.
You better bet that quarterback, whether it's Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, is your future franchise quarterback. Because if he is, if he's a guy that your team can get around, if he's a guy that can bring the culture back to the New York Jets, everything is there for them to succeed. Everything is. Yeah, and I really let's talk about the 49ers real quick. The number 3 overall pick. A lot of rumors, right? A lot of rumors are talking about Mac Jones to the 49ers. And I want to get you guys' opinions because I mean, I've looked at this fit 10 to 15 times. There is no fit. They trade up for a star caliber quarterback, which is Trey Lance or Justin Fields. That's my opinion. Jake, you're a draft guy. Talk to us first.
Yeah, it's smoke screen. It's smoke screen season, right? And immediately, there was never talk on San Francisco being in on Mac Jones. It was either New England, Carolina likes the accuracy and the West Coast. I've always said New Orleans because he throws a ball very similar to Drew Brees. He's not Drew Brees, just like Joe Burrow's not Tom Brady, but they both throw very similar footballs. And right when they trade up, it's not going to be Justin Fields. It's not going to be Trey Lance, even though those two are a match made in heaven. It's going to be Mac Jones. It's going to be Mac Jones. He's going to be the third quarterback taken in this draft. And Justin Fields is going to fall to quarterback 4 or quarterback 5. And, Trey Lance is going to fall out of the top 10. No. The 49ers did not give up 3 years of elite talent and their future for a guy that they probably could have gotten at 12. A guy that they probably could have traded down and maybe still gotten. I'm not going to say that, but they did not give up this much draft compensation, this much of their future for Mac Jones. He's not going to be the pick. It's all smokescreen. I would be shocked if they took him. I would be shocked if they took him. I'm not going to say who they're going to take in Fields or Lance. Either of those two will be fine. They both fit. They're both very athletic. They're both tough physical runners. They're probably going to turn into a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo, but the Niners are trying to win a Super Bowl this year, and Mac Jones is not going to win a Super Bowl year 1.
Yeah, and I know, Max, I know you want to say something, but it just does not make sense, right? Because I think we talked about this last show, the 49ers, they lost in the Super Bowl 2 years ago to the Kansas City Chiefs. I can completely see this 49ers organization looking at the quarterback on the other side and saying, I want one. I need one of those, right? And if you compare Jimmy Garoppolo and Mac Jones, I'm sorry, year 1, I'm a huge Jimmy G fan. I don't know what I don't know what he's going to provide that Jimmy G isn't. So I think this is they want that superstar quarterback. They want the athletic new age quarterback. They want a guy to compete with the Patrick Mahomes of the world, and they want to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. And they don't trade up to number 3 for a Mac Jones type player.
I completely agree. I mean, I think, you can get Jones at a lower value, at a lower pick, like Jake was alluding to. And like you're mentioning with the athleticism, you're not going to get uncle at the barbecue body, Mac Jones, running the football and being efficient with his feet. No, that's not happening, right? It's a very one-dimensional talent. And frankly, I don't think he's a first-round grade. In my opinion, he's not a first-round grade. Obviously, he will be going to the first round. But I think that if you trade up to 3, I think they have their eyes on Justin Fields. I think everyone knows that Lawrence is going number 1 and Wilson's going number 2, even though I agree with Jake's point earlier that Wilson is not necessarily a better prospect than Fields. I think Fields is better than Wilson, but I think Wilson will be going at 2. Now, I think Justin Fields is definitely I think if I had to choose, it would be Justin Fields over Lance, because while I agree that Lance has a lot of potential, I feel like the 49ers want a guy they can plug in from day one, and I frankly don't think Lance has that ability. I think he'll be very good if you sit him and let him develop on the bench for a few weeks or even to a year, if not more. But I just think that Fields is the kind of guy that he has that experience, that big game experience. He played in a Power 5 conference. He brought back Big Ten football. He brought back Ohio State to national championship contention single-handedly. He has that experience to go into this football team and immediately make an impact. And I just think that, Kyle Shanahan, like you mentioned, wants a Mahomes-type talent. I think Fields can be a Mahomes-type talent at the right situation, and I think that he will be the number 3 overall pick for the San Francisco 49ers.
Here's the argument that people that are saying Mac Jones could go 3 to the Niners are trying to make. It's like, Kyle Shanahan's worked with these, pocket passer quarterbacks, and that's what Mac Jones is, right? So you would want Mac Jones, but doesn't the fact that he's trading up to, he already has one. He already has that kind of a quarterback on his roster right now in Garoppolo. It got him to the Super Bowl, but they didn't win. And arguably, if you had a quarterback with a better arm, you could have won that game because Garoppolo could have made that deep touchdown pass to take the lead. Doesn't the fact that he's trading up to make a move like this signal to you that he doesn't want a quarterback who is just a game managing kind of pocket passing quarterback? He wants something more than that. I think the Patrick Mahomes is actually a great comparison because Andy Reid, went to the playoffs with Alex Smith. They won a couple games. Obviously, they couldn't get to the Super Bowl, but he had some success, got him to the playoffs consistently with Alex Smith, but he wanted more, and he saw a quarterback that he absolutely loved in the draft, and he made a move, and here they are. They've won a Super Bowl and been to another one. So to me, Kyle Shanahan is absolutely not kind of trying to trade up for more of the same. He's trying to trade up for something different and something that he believes he can develop into something better.
Exactly.
Let me just say one more thing on this. So whoever they draft, and there's a reason why Jimmy G is still on the rosters because he's still their quarterback. They have a Super Bowl team right now, and I think they're going to go back. And that is not going to be with a rookie quarterback. Whoever they draft is going to sit, which is why they traded up because they feel this kind of stability that, okay, we can take this guy. We're not in a Green Bay Packers situation where we don't need to get Brandon Ayuk. We don't need to get Denzel Mims. We don't need to get T. Higgins to win a Super Bowl right now. We have this team. We literally were there the last time we were fully healthy. And, Garoppolo's good. So he's their quarterback right now. So they have this kind of stability that say we can trade up and get one of these stud prospect or projects. Mac Jones is a project, but I don't think he doesn't have any star potential to me. Fields has star potential. Lance has star potential. And the fit is perfect because they go to a place where there is no pressure to play year one. With Carolina, no pressure to play year one. With San Francisco, there's even less pressure to play year one.
I agree in part because I do think that I can see a situation where, say, after the first 6 weeks, they kind of evaluate Jimmy Garoppolo's play and they're like, okay, maybe he's not winning games like we want him to win. So they maybe will either ship him off or they'll bench him for a Justin Fields, ship him off to another team, and Justin Fields can come in and provide a little bit of a spark that maybe Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't able to provide. Maybe they start off a little slower than people have expected. I do expect them to go far in the playoffs. I think they're a very good team. But what if with Jimmy G, they start off a little slow? He himself doesn't look very consistent at the quarterback position. And, they just want to bring in a guy that can provide an instant spark. And I agree that both Fields and Lance do need time to develop. But I think Fields more than Lance can do that. I don't think Lance is ready to start at any point next season.
And that's really funny because the scenario that you mentioned about them starting slow is their worst. That's the worst case scenario where they're 4-3 and Jimmy G has a 81 passer rating. And here comes the rookie who may or may not be ready. Jimmy G's won over 65% of his games. He ain't starting slow. The only problem with Jimmy G is that he hasn't been able to play a full season other than that Super Bowl year. So the reason why they did this move is because, okay, Jimmy G might not be our future. He might not see the end of that contract that he signed 3 years ago after he went 4-0 as a starter after being traded from New England. But he's still a guy right now, and this team is at worst the third best team in the NFC when healthy.
Yeah,
with Jimmy G.
But also the Niners were competitive with CJ Beathard as their quarterback last year, so I just don't.
Nick Mullen beat the Rams twice.
Nick Mullen too, yeah.
Nick Mullen beat the Rams twice.
The 49ers,
they were still competitive with them. That was their quarterback.
The 49ers had a top 10 offense with and without Jimmy G. So that shows that Jimmy G isn't really the guy. But Jake, I'm saying, can you see? Yes, he wins. I love Jimmy G. I love him. I thought they could have won a lot without him or with him this year, not even a rookie quarterback. But can you not see a reality where Justin Fields takes over 10 weeks down in the season?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
No, awesome, I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm just saying that the reason they traded up is because they know Jimmy G can start the season and most likely finish it unless he gets injured, which has happened before when they weren't 14-2. So that could happen. But I'm just saying I don't think it will. As long as he's healthy, he's their quarterback for at least another year. But
we'll see.
They're gonna take one. That's why they traded up. That they're not trading up to draft Kyle Pitts. Not trading up to Jeff Penei Sewell. They're not trading up to Jeff Micah Parsons. They're trading it for a quarterback. It's a quarterback succession plan. It's very underrated. Most teams don't have one, and they're screwed. The teams that do, the Green Bay Packers, kind of had a Hall of Fame quarterback for 25 straight years.
Steelers.
Can I add my one point to that with regard to deciding between Fields and Lance for the 49ers? I don't think they would have traded all the way up to 3 to take Lance, because I think Lance's value, while it is very close to Fields, I do think they could have traded up to 4 to get Lance. I think they could have traded even.
I disagree. For me, not to cut you off. I think the things that draft analysts, being in this community, I realized, like, looking back last year, even what I thought last year, people don't take into account that if a team wants a guy, they're going to get him. They don't give a damn what I think. Exactly. They don't give a damn what Jake thinks. Like, they're going to go get their guy. We've seen it time and time again. If Trey Lance is their guy, they're going to go up to 3 to get him. And that's why I was like conflicted on, okay, if they really like Mac Jones, they would go up and get him.
But then explain to me why they couldn't do the same thing with Atlanta, who's trade down candidates. You can probably give up less trade capital.
You want 3. You want 3. You want 3
because you want to jump Atlanta, because no one knows what Atlanta's going to do. No one knows what they're going to do. So you want to jump them. You want to get them out of the way. They could still trade down. Atlanta could very well take your guy. They wanted to jump Atlanta. They went to 3.
What I'm saying is,
Atlanta was at 4. If Atlanta was at 5, they would have went to 4.
Okay, but here's my point, right? Miami was at 3. Atlanta was at 4 pre-trade, right? Miami's not taking a quarterback. We all know this. So they're like, okay, Atlanta at the time was interesting because they could go quarterback. Now we're getting reports that they were looking to trade down, and who knows how long they've been looking to trade down. So why did you have to jump them?
They're looking to trade down now because they're looking at potentially getting the last quarterback available.
If
San Francisco takes Mac Jones, Atlanta's sitting here is like, we have the golden ticket now.
Oh, I agree.
What everything's pointing to is the 49ers, like, obviously, okay, in a perfect world, you give up the least amount of assets. The 49ers don't give a damn right now. They have a plan in place. They understand that, okay, whether it's they want to win this year or they have a plan, hey, we have a 2-year window, we're going to win at one of these. They know they needed a quarterback. They don't care if they gave up an extra second-round pick, or they don't care if they give up an extra 4th-round pick. They're confident that as long as they get their guy, which is whether it's Trey Lance or Justin Fields, they will do that. So if you get to 3, you're guaranteed one of those guys. Guaranteed. And I get your point, but how do we know the Falcons weren't willing to trade down with them then? All I know is they traded up because they wanted to go get their guy.
I agree with that, but I also think that, when you give up that much capital, their guy, it would make sense that their guy would be the second best quarterback in this draft, and that's Justin Fields.
What if they think
they might have Fields at 1.
Yeah.
So
they could. So
just because they have someone at 1 doesn't mean, okay, we need to trade up to 1. We know the Jags are taking Trevor Lawrence.
No, 100%.
And we know the Jets are probably taking either Fields or Wilson.
It's gonna be Wilson.
I would be willing to wager that the Niners probably have Wilson higher on their board than Fields and Lance. So if the Jets go Fields, they're saying, "Oh, that's perfect. We get our number 1 guy." But now they're sitting here like, "Okay, we need to make sure Atlanta. We need to make sure one of our guys is at 3. So we're gonna jump it or is available to us wherever we're picking. So we need to jump Atlanta because we don't know what they're going to do. And the Atlanta trade down rumors just started now because San Francisco traded up. So Atlanta's trading down, or maybe potentially trading down if they don't end up going Kyle Pitts, because, okay, now we're looking at potentially drafting quarterback 4 when we originally, with Miami there and the Jets still having Sam Darnold, might have gotten quarterback 2.
Yeah, I think that's the reality. Is at least now we know 3 quarterbacks in the top 3, and right now the draft starts at Atlanta. They decide the flow of the draft. They decide if they trade down to a Denver Broncos, which is our next topic, Drew Lock. And obviously we have some comments here. A lot of people talking about Drew Lock, but the reality of the situation before we actually get into what they're going to do is they're going to give Drew Lock another chance. That's the reality, right? Whether you think Drew Lock's bad or whether you think he's not, they've had too much turmoil on their team, too many young starters, too many guys opting out last year. Drew Lock hasn't been given a fair chance. And we realized that when we interviewed Shelby Harris. The locker room loves Drew Lock. And not saying that means anything, but at least they understand that he's getting one more chance. So that's why I personally don't think that they'll take a quarterback. But even if they do, it's an open competition. So that's where I'm at. I think they give Drew Lock 1 full year. But Will, start us off. Is Drew Lock their guy, or do you want them to take a quarterback this year?
I would like them to be aggressive and move off Drew Lock, but I do agree that it's more likely that, yeah, because, I mean, the reality is for the Broncos, they had so many injuries and so many problems last year that, Drew Lock kind of being one of them, but it was also some of it was out of his control as well. So they're going to give him another chance. Right now, the trend is for the Falcons to potentially be looking to trade down, even though we really don't know what they want to do. So if the Falcons do end up trading down, it's going to be for a QB hungry team. And I don't know. I would like if the Broncos, here's what I would like the Broncos to do. I'd like the Broncos to try and cut off a potential trade with any other team, because if you trade up to 4, you're going to be able to get the 4th best quarterback. And if it's Fields, if it's Lance, whoever it is, that's a better QB option than Drew Lock. And I think that's just a fact at this point. So I'd like them to get them because it would be a major upgrade over Drew Lock. And then I think you'd have a legitimate chance to build something. I do not believe Drew Lock is the guy for the Broncos. I just don't. Has a lot of issues. He may be their quarterback next year. I think it's more likely. I just don't think that it's a good option for them in the long term or even next year. So adding Fields or Lance to replace him, I think would be perfect in a trade up. Heck, I don't know. You may slander me for this, but I might actually have Mac Jones over Drew Lock. And I'm being dead serious about that. Mac Jones, at least he can actually, said it before, he's a pocket passer. At least he can actually execute the simple things. Sure, he's not going to be able to get outside of the pocket and make heroic plays like Drew Lock is kind of capable of doing, but Drew Lock could just not execute the simple, fundamental football plays. And I'd rather have someone who can at least just do the little things right and is able to execute just the simple, basic football plays. And is a good pocket passer if you put weapons which the Broncos have around him. I'd rather have a quarterback like that than Drew Lock, who's just inaccurate, wildly inaccurate with the football. And Mac Jones, at least he is the definition of efficiency, and especially efficiency inside the pocket. Drew Lock is basically the exact opposite of that. And yes, he's a little bit more mobile for sure, but I'd just rather have a guy in Mac Jones that can execute the simple things. But look, the Broncos, yeah, I agree. They are going to probably stick with Lock just because they had so many problems that were outside of his control. So it is a little bit not fair for them just to replace him. But I think it would be a better move if the Broncos did get one of the 4th or 5th best quarterback.
I'm going to defend my boy. I'm defending Drew Lock, and the reality is, okay, you talked about like inaccuracy, right?
You thought he was an MVP candidate before last year. I know.
Okay, and I mean, like, look, it's the reason quarterbacks succeed at the NFL level is because of their situation. Any quarterback has to have a situation, and I will stand by that till the day I die. That's why if Sam Darnold succeeds, it's because of his situation. That's why Ryan Tannehill succeeded in Tennessee, because of his situation. And Drew Lock's the same thing. Drew Lock hasn't been given the fair chance. Last year, Jerry Jeudy was his number 1 option, right? I mean, Jerry Jeudy had the most drops in the NFL. He's a rookie wide receiver, but heading into this year, you have Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Melvin Gordon, Noah Fant, a revamped defense. So I'm giving him another chance. And as far as his inaccuracy, yes, last year he looked bad. I'll be the first guy to admit he looked bad, but that's his play style, right? People love Zach Wilson because he gets out of the pocket. Drew Lock does the same thing. He's a gunslinging quarterback, and he brings the energy to the team. And if he succeeds, it will be because of that mentality. All I'm saying is I'm giving him another chance. I want to see him with this receiving core, KJ Hamler, all those guys, like I said earlier. I want to see him with that receiving core before I say anything, because I loved him as a prospect, and I still believe he can be their franchise guy.
So here's my rebuttal to that.
Can I piggyback off that really quickly?
Okay, yeah, sure.
So I agree with that, and also you have to remember he did suffer. It was a pretty injury-riddled year for him. It was his throwing shoulder, I believe. So that obviously affects the way he was throwing the football and his confidence throwing the ball down the field. So I expect him. I do think you have to give him a full year. I think he's deserved at least another year to prove himself, and also given the Broncos' track record of trading up in the first round to take a quarterback. In recent memory, I believe they did that with Paxton Lynch. So I don't really know if the Broncos trading up in the first round for a quarterback is the best idea from a managerial situation, because let's be honest, John Elway has not hit on a quarterback since taking Peyton Manning in free agency. So I think you stick with Drew Lock, and I think you fill some other holes. But Will, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, here's my rebuttal to that. Normally, I am all on the side of giving a quarterback more of a fair shot. I mean, I said with Darnold, I think Jalen Hurts should be given a fair shot. I am on the side of getting a fair shot. I just think the Broncos are in a legitimate spot where they can get someone who is, Mac Jones. I'm not going to say Mac Jones is like going to be significantly better than Drew Lock, because Drew Lock has his strengths, Mac Jones has his strengths, and they both have some pretty significant weaknesses as well. It's just me kind of preferring Mac Jones a little bit over Drew Lock. But the fourth quarterback is going to be available, whether it's Trey Lance at 4 or, Justin Fields, whoever it may be. The opportunity to get one of those guys, that's to me, that's just a significant upgrade over Drew Lock. And I just think that should
Tell me why is Trey Lance a significant upgrade over Drew Lock right now? Tell me.
I mean, you tell me. You had Trey Lance QB1.
No, I want to hear. Why is Trey Lance a significant upgrade over Drew Lock right now?
I mean, really, like Trey. Okay, so Trey Lance is better. He's more mobile. He's has a better he's a better arm. Everything.
No,
like he's a better prospect. Everything.
Trey Lance hasn't played football in a year.
Trey Lance played FCS football. He's a very raw prospect. I think a lot of the hype comes from the fact that he broke Carson Wentz's records at the same school. That's why I think Trey Lance is a little overhyped, but I think it's too soon to call any of these rookies successful aside from me.
They can be successful, sure. I mean, they're rookies. I'm not denying Trey Lance is raw, but he may have the second best upside in the entire draft outside of Trevor Lawrence. To me, you're just getting a significant future upgrade versus Drew Lock, but they're not going. I don't expect him to do it. I'm just saying I'd like him to do it because I'm just not a believer in Drew Lock.
Yeah, and my thing is this team. I don't know, Vic Fangio. He understands okay, if they don't show any improvement this year, he could be out. I like Vic Fangio. I love what he's done with this defense. This team is somewhat in a win-now mode. They're progressing towards that. Last year was, add some talent. That's why Jerry Jeudy, hopefully in his third season, he'll be a breakout star. He'll be a top 15 receiver. That's their goal in its third season. So this year is, let's compete. They need 8 wins this year. They need 8 wins. And that's why Trey Lance, I love the idea because for the future, if I was in the organization, I was assured my job security, go for it. Take Trey Lance. But the reality is they're not secure in their job situation. And every year you go to win this season. And Trey Lance, if you bring in Trey Lance, you're basically telling Drew Lock, hey, you're done. It's same thing with Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts. You're bringing Jalen Hurts. You're telling Carson Wentz psychologically, you're done. And that's why I just don't think it's a smart idea for the Broncos. Anyone else?
They're not going to be picking at 9, I don't think. I think they're either going to trade up if they're going to have a guy that they like. If they like Lance and he's still there when Atlanta's done, or maybe they even traded with Atlanta. I don't think they'll get into the top 3 to get one of the top 3 guys, whoever goes 1, 2, and 3. I think that they're going to look towards the remaining one, whoever's left, and then they'll give Atlanta, and Atlanta will gladly take that haul unless they're enamored with Kyle Pitts, or they're going to trade back. Denver doesn't really fit at 9. I don't think they need an elite positional player or an elite defensive player, especially considering the price that someone's going to offer them or the price that they're going to offer someone else for a quarterback. But Drew Lock is not good enough to have his job solidified right now, but he's also in a situation where they drafted 3 receivers last year because of him and because they're going to give him a fair shot. He was injured last year. It was a COVID year. Denver played a game without a quarterback. So it was a weird year, and he's going to get another chance. He'll be on the roster week 1. He'll be their starter. Whether they take someone else, I don't know. They might. But they might even look towards Kyle Trask in the second round because that just seems like John Elway's dream, even though John Elway's not the GM anymore. But big, tall, strong arm guy. Even though Kyle Trask doesn't have a strong arm, but people think he does, but he doesn't. So they're gonna look for a quarterback. Like that's what people have been telling me. Like Benjamin Albright, like this, they're gonna look for a quarterback. But Drew Lock is fine right now. Like he's their starter right now, but he's not good enough to have his job solidified and safe.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think that's the conclusion. And if you guys haven't checked it out, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, guys. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got a lot of content on there. As Jake just said, he's breaking down every single team's offseason. Just broke down the Broncos. I believe we have one more coming out tonight. The Cowboys.
Dallas Cowboys coming out tonight. Giants coming out tomorrow. Then Eagles, Chargers, Vikings the next couple days.
Yes, sir. So we got a lot of stuff on the YouTube channel, but let's talk about the NFL draft real quick. We got 5 minutes to talk about pass rushing, right? There's a lot of guys. Greg Rousseau, Carlos Basham, who's one of my favorites. A lot of guys. Azeez Ojulari. So Jake, we'll start this off. Any surprises in your rankings? Like, is there a guy you're really high on or a guy you're really low on? Just give me a couple guys real quick.
Ojulari is edge 1, and the theme this year is speed and power. There's a ton of variety. I mean, Azeez Ojulari, speed and power. Kwity Paye, power. Jalen Phillips, speed. Ronnie Perkins, speed.
I'm actually disagreeing.
There's what?
To say Azeez is pass rusher 1 definitively the way you did is absolute nonsense. There's no. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
He's 1. Why?
Really?
Turn on the film.
Okay, wait. Can you explain to me why he's 1?
Well, I think Kwity Paye. So Kwity Paye is fine, but he only has like a season and a half under his belt, a couple injuries. Yeah. Azeez Ojulari is like just a lot more dominant. I think he has better pass rush moves. He's faster. He tested better. Give me Azeez Ojulari. It's close. It's close.
Yeah, that's okay. That's why I was laughing, because you're like, yeah, Azeez number 1 by far, and I'm like, dude, it's so. Did
I say by far? Oh no,
you made it seem like it was like he's definitively like.
No, he's 1.
It's a very competitive draft class this year. For me, I would say my biggest movers. I think Rousseau has moved down. I think the pro day actually. So the Miami pro day, I think it did Jalen Phillips a lot of favors, and I think it did Greg Rousseau the complete opposite. I would not be surprised if, to be fair, I guess Azeez or Kwity Paye or even Jalen Phillips go ahead of Gregory Rousseau this year. So I think right now my number 1 is probably Kwity Paye. I would say Jalen Phillips is my 2, and then I would say Azeez is my 3.
Yeah, Jalen Phillips is the guy that I would say more high on than most. I mean, he's not necessarily edge 1, but I just think he's really underrated. The dude has incredibly pro-ready skill set already. I mean, with just the length and the burst. And just the strength overall is pretty incredible. And he can just win in a multitude of ways on the line. So I think he was consistently dominant last year in Miami. So he's just a violent player.
I think the biggest question mark with Jalen Phillips is that, he had that 1 year with Miami where he played really well. At UCLA, he underperformed a little bit, and he has health concerns. I think it's respiratory. I don't know what it is entirely, but I know he has some health concerns. So that might take a hit on his draft stock, which is why I think right now in my mock draft that I released recently, you go check it out on the website, I have Kwity Paye being the first pass rusher taken. So self-plug, shameless. I had Kwity Paye being taken as the first pass rusher. I think, he may not be, Greg Rousseau levels of getting sacks, but I do think in terms of pressures, I think that's something that you have to value more when you analyze these prospects. And I think Kwity Paye has proven enough to be the best one in a very competitive class. I would say Jalen Phillips, I said earlier, would be in that 2 to 3 range. I would say that his health concerns may put him, kind of middle of the first to late first. But Greg Rousseau is the biggest question mark, like I was mentioning. He could go as high as, top 15, maybe to a team like the Vikings who need a pass rusher. But, I mean, we could even see him fall to the Colts. We could see him fall to the Titans. I think he'll be in the first round for sure. It's just a matter of where now. Before, people had him as a top 15 lock. I don't know if you can say that anymore for Rousseau.
No.
It's very tough. It's very tough.
No. A lock?
You can't. Yeah. No. I think a lot of it is, right, heading into a season, everyone loves to hype up certain players. Like we saw a lot of players this year. I mean, Rousseau was one of them. Alabama. I'm blanking on some names.
Leatherwood.
Alex Leatherwood.
Look at this. The two Stanford guys, Adebo and Walker Little, were both consensus top 15. Well, and Adebo were consensus top 15 players. Injuries, didn't play, and we're here with them being 4th-round prospects.
Exactly, and that's the reality. Things change, and for me, I just want to put my stamp on one guy. I've said it multiple times during this draft process, and Carlos Bastrem. Love the guy. He's went through the whole edge rushers thing. I mean, I'm not
taking day 2 for sure. I think. If not,
I'm not. Round. I haven't scouted as much as Jake has. I mean, we looked over some guys, but like you're way more in depth about the actual like band of the players. But Carlos Basham, I mean, he just dominated. He has the pass rushing moves. He just purely dominated in college, and he tested well to back it up. So he's got that athleticism. He's got that there. He put it on the tape. He succeeded. He wasn't just a cleanup sacker like Gregory Rousseau. He was a guy who actually beat his matchups. He won inside, he won outside, and that's what I love. I have him in the first round as a lock for my first round. Don't think he's a lock to go in the first round, but the production in college and his athleticism shows that there is no way that this guy's going to fail at the NFL level.
Yeah, he's bursty, he's speedy, he's bendy. He's the 2 B's and the S, as I like to say. Bursty, speedy, and bendy. I don't really say that, but like he does it all. He's gonna play from the inside probably, maybe year 1. Like he'll get a chance to rush from the inside. I think he's big enough. I think he's fast enough to penetrate through the inside. But I also think he's bendy enough to work on the outside in a wide 9 stance, kind of like what Brian Burns did. Like the Carolina Panthers loved Brian Burns. Brian Burns was one of my draft crushes in 2019, and he is freaky. He's probably a top 10 edge rusher, if maybe top 15 at the least in the league right now, with a ton of room to develop his skills. And one of the biggest knocks with Ojulari, and it's very similar to Carlos Basham, is they don't have a secondary pass rush move. If you go to a team with a history of developing pass rushers, the Baltimore Ravens, other teams that I'm forgetting, but teams that love developing pass rushers can easily develop a secondary move. But even then, if you're a 1st or 2nd round talent, because of your intangibles and because of the way you test and because of that one pass rush move that dominated college offensive tackles, and for Basham, it was the ACC. Pretty good tackles in the ACC. For Ojulari, it was the SEC. I've heard there are pretty good tackles in that conference as well. I have no doubts that either of those guys can develop secondary moves. I don't have Basham in the first round. I think he's in my top 60. I have 15 edge rushers in my top 100. It's ridiculous. The class is very deep. I think I have 16 guys who have third or second or first round grades. It's ridiculous. It's a lot deeper than last year's class, and last year's class is pretty good too.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I mean, it's not really so top heavy, right? I mean, like we're
it's not.
There's like I'm okay if an edge rusher doesn't go top 10. Like, I mean, there's too many offensive tackles.
I don't think an edge rusher will go top 10. It'd be very hard to see that.
Doubtful.
It's going to be a lot of skill positions, because the skill position players positions are very top heavy, and there might be 5 quarterbacks taken in the first 10 picks. When there's 5 quarterbacks taken in the first 10 picks, an edge rusher, unless he's Chase Young, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, it's not going to happen.
Exactly. And I mean, as we were talking about, I mean, like you look at the Bengals, I mean, edge rushers are going to be there in the 2nd round. They're going to be there in the 3rd round because you got a lot of talented guys. Jake, as you said, you have 15 guys in your top 60, 15 edge rushers. But
I need people to stop
in the
top 100. Quick PSA, I need people to stop mocking edge rushers to the Steelers in round 1, please. All right, please stop.
Oh, we have Alex Highsmith. We have the best pass rusher in the league. We have a guy from Charlotte who played 12
edge rushers when our offense is garbage.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think a lot of people really didn't realize how good Alex Highsmith played, right? Bud Dupree, I think, is a really overrated edge rusher because, I mean, a lot of it was not cleanup sacks, but he wasn't dominating. Alex Highsmith,
TJ Watt on the other side.
Yeah, but Alex Highsmith put up just as much production as him. But let's finish off with one final basketball topic. Jalen Suggs. Will, I know you want to talk about this. I personally, I mean, I wasn't huge into college basketball this year, but I love the energy he brought, right? The championship game, he was one of the only guys that was on that team was really fired up. UCLA, he was fired up. He was their guy. But Will, is he should he be in the conversation for the number 1 overall pick this year, or should he not? Talk to me.
Jalen Suggs had a phenomenal tournament. He absolutely, I would say he rated. I mean, he was already a consensus top 5 pick, but I think he locked himself into the top 3. Now, I'll be honest, him and Jalen Green are kind of fighting for that number 3 spot, and it's tough between those two guys. But I would give Suggs a slight edge. I just think with the shot that he hit, one of the greatest college basketball shots of all time, Jalen Green, he's been playing in the G League, and that's absolutely going to help him when it comes to how he plays in the NBA, especially in year 1. But the hype for Suggs is through the roof, and there's going to be quite a few teams that could use a lead point guard that I think will be in that top 3 to 5 range. But Suggs is talented enough to be the number 1 pick, but because of who's ahead of him in Cade Cunningham and Evan Mobley, he's just not. To me, he's just not on their level. I mean, it's not that he's not like all that. I mean, he's close, but he's just here's the reality between the top 5 picks and Cade, Mobley, Suggs, Kuminga, and Green. Jalen Suggs has the lowest ceiling, I would say, out of all 5 of those guys. That's not a knock on Suggs. I just think he's a kind of prospect that does pretty much everything on the floor. He does at at least average to really good level. And I think he's excellent. He's a great passer. That's his playmaking instincts are the best part of his game. However, his scoring game, he does everything well, but he doesn't do anything elite. Like, he's a hot and cold catch and shoot shooter. His off the dribble shooting is not very good. It's at best average. So he definitely needs to work on that. 71% free throw shooter. So that's not a very good sign either. And his defense is good, but he does have a tendency to get a little bit lost off ball. He was in a pretty good defensive system in Gonzaga. I mean, he had all that talent with Gonzaga too. So, I think people are getting a little bit too hyped up just because, Jalen Suggs was in a situation, and he was the best player on that team without a doubt. And you saw that in the tournament. But he had, an excellent shooter on the wing in Corey Kispert. He had Drew Timme, who's probably not going to be an NBA guy, but he's an excellent college player, as we saw. Well, except for in the championship game. But, he can be an excellent college player. Timmy time.
I think Will.
Jalen Suggs has look. He's going to be top 3, but he's just not on Mobley's level. He doesn't have the two-way impact that Mobley's going to have. Mobley's going to be one of the best centers in the league pretty shortly, I believe. Cade Cunningham's going to be one of the best point guards in the league very shortly. Suggs, his floor, I think, is higher than a guy like Jalen Green and Kuminga, and I wouldn't say his floor is higher than Mobley or Cade Cunningham, but his ceiling is just not on those guys' level. Like, those guys are going to be stars and superstars, and I could see Suggs just becoming like an excellent starter, but just not like a perennial all-star kind of player.
Yeah,
that's realistic for Jalen Suggs.
There's levels to it, right? Like last year, sure. I mean, we talked about this a lot this year, how teams shouldn't have slept on LaMelo Ball, the first 2 teams. Like, LaMelo Ball, talented, extremely talented, and I think you look at the guys like Cade Cunningham and Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley is a superstar, freak athlete, like ridiculous. And I can't imagine teams taking Suggs over Mobley.
Evan Mobley puts on 15 pounds.
Or Suggs
wreck the NBA.
Yeah, or I can't imagine teams taking Suggs over the top 2 guys because of what he did in the March Madness tournament. I can't, and that's why I think the hype's there right now, but at the end of the day, you have 2 months until the draft, 3 months. The hype will die down. The first 2 picks will be Cunningham and Mobley, and Suggs will be right behind them, but he should not be at the top 2.
Yeah, I agree. He'll be a great NBA player. I just don't. The superstar upside just is not on the same level as Cade and Mobley and even Jalen Green, I would say too.
Exactly, and. Yeah, that pretty much does it. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in to another TWSN show. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us on Instagram, on Twitter. We got a lot of guys. We have 50 guys on our team pumping out daily articles, making YouTube videos, Instagram videos, all that good stuff here at the Right Way Sports Network. I want to say thank you to Max, Jake, and Will. Every single Tuesday, you guys are here bringing the heat. Max got a little fiery today, Jake as always, and Will. Thank you guys. And
did we make $1 today, Daniel?
What'd you say?
Did we make $1 today?
Oh, we did. Every Tuesday, Will. Every Tuesday. But as always, guys, the show will go on. Have a good night.